of both. Mike, if you would like to call us to order, I can pull up the agenda.
Yep, sounds good. So welcome to the joint meeting between the PTBC and Library Trustees. Today is Monday, June 22nd. Reminder that this meeting is being recorded and everything that is entered into the chat is part of public record. And also of note, Scott is absent tonight, so Megan will be a voting member.
Okay, thank you.
And we can start with attendance.
Okay, let's do it this way. I'll just call names. Dirk's here. Fleckner.
Here.
Riegert. My apologies.
Igor,
Oh my
You
goodness.
were right the first time. Here.
Oh, I should do my German again. Okay. Secor.
Here.
There you are, Glenn. Siegel.
Here.
Teal.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Hazelton is not here. Karpinski.
Here.
O'Connell.
Here.
Padden.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wimberg.
Here.
Zegowitz.
Here.
Berlinski or Perkins here tonight?
neither.
Okay. Liedberg.
Here.
Rainville.
Here,
Glass.
Here.
Goodwin.
he won't be here tonight.
Okay. McGrory.
Here.
Luzitis.
He won't be here tonight.
Okay. Fevrier.
I'm here.
And Salone.
No one.
Just me
Michael.
from FA.
Oh, and Tucker all not here. Okay. Wilkovich Cordy.
Here.
Okay. Here we go.
Got it.
All right. Good, Jennifer.
Good evening, everyone. We have a very specific agenda tonight. There is no new business on our agenda. The scope of our agenda tonight is about change orders, proposed change orders that are over $15,000. You'll see that there's 6 on our agenda tonight, and we will need a vote individually we'll need a vote on these items. We may need to take them individually. And we have a summary on the agenda of what change orders we have executed to date, but that is the sum of tonight's meeting agenda. So I'm going to take over the screen and share a presentation. I believe you should all be seeing a cover sheet to a PowerPoint document.
Yep.
Great, thank you. So I'll kick it off from here. So our agenda tonight is the 6 PCOs, proposed change orders. They are for a variety of topics and a variety of amounts. However, I am going to take them out of order of this because I do believe some of them will require more discussion. And so we're specifically starting with 6, then 5, and then we'll go into 1, 2, 3, and 4. They all are covered in this slide deck, but just in the interest of trying to have, if anyone needs to drop, this is, we wanted to start with item 6. So,
Jennifer, I do have to leave at roughly 7:15, so thank you for that.
yes, thank you. Because item 6, this first one is, I think, the most complex item, and also it's the one that is actually quite fresh and has the biggest financial or time impact to everything we're talking about. The issue at hand is that we have discovered asbestos, and I'm going to start talking here, and Leah, if there is at any moment in time, if you want to unmute yourself and just speak up, please let me know. Please go ahead. But I'll kick off the summary here of what we've got. This is an unforeseen condition. When we were doing excavation, there is insulation, and in these photographs, you can see it. It's this light blue material that it was covered by the ground. It was subgrade insulation, and it was adhered to the foundation wall. It began crumbling. The intent was for it to remain in place, but in that process, we did some testing of that adhesive, and we discovered that it was positive for asbestos. This was not anticipated because this is from the 1980s construction. This is not part of the older part of the building. What you're looking at here, you can probably identify it from, this gentleman is standing essentially on the corner, the southwest corner of the building. So he's standing in what will be, you're adjacent to the church here. So we
If I can jump in, Jennifer, just for a second,
Yeah.
and perhaps I misheard you, but I just wanted to make one quick clarification. The blue insulation board was not intended to remain in place. It was intended to be replaced with new insulation, which is why they were touching it at all, and that's when it started to crumble, because the intention was to just put back new materials in order to help with the thermal envelope that we all know has been a very important part of this project. And that was just the clarification I wanted to make. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank
And
you,
is,
Leah.
is the motivation thermal or is the motivation more waterproofing?
Primarily thermal. There was some waterproofing as well. The intention was to put on a new waterproofing product, the same that was going on the new portion of the foundation. There is also a perimeter drain that is going in this area. So the excavation was going to be happening regardless in order to put the perimeter drain in to help take care of the groundwater. But that was the primary way that the water is going to be addressed. But there will also be new, fabric of, it's like the dimple board that
Dimple
goes, the
board.
drainage board that goes outside of this insulation layer. So there are water mitigation components to the system, but this removal of the insulation and replacement, which we had originally intended, was thermal.
So we have 3 options that we want to share with you. I want to be clear, I don't think we've come to you yet with multiple options. So I'd like to explain the options, and I have another slide after this that is also some information from our environmental consultant. So if you can, I'm sure that there will be questions on this. So if you could pause until I show both of these 2 slides, and it may answer some of those questions. But what we are seeking from the Joint Committee tonight is a selection of one of these options to move forward with. So option 1 is to remediate all areas. And so you're looking at the west, but this would, when we say all areas, it means the west and the east. So you're not looking at the driveway aisle of the building, but that area would be included in option 1. It has a substantial cost of over $200,000, and it will add 6 to 8 week delay to the project. And then the reason for that delay is because this would be a significant hazardous remediation, and we have to suspend the construction that would be happening adjacent to it while the protective measures are in place. So if you're not aware, this there's roofing work that's going on, the exterior envelope, and also this area of the site, they're working to start, they have some formwork up to pour some walls in the landscaping area. So they would want to be working in this area, but the remediation would interrupt that. And that would be additionally true on the eastern side of the building as well. Option 2 is to remediate only the exposed areas on the west side. This has a cost of $32,971, and it will add up to about 15 days to the schedule. And option 3 is to remediate only the disturbed areas on the west side. And we believe that has a not to exceed value of $18,000. This will add up to 5 days to the schedule. And it's worth noting that all exposed areas will be covered by a metal panel when construction is complete. And I want to share the next slide. So option 2, I'm going to zoom in on this. Option 2, this is the exposed areas of option 2. I've called that color purple. You might refer to it as blue, but it's the sort of this bluish purple color along the edge of the building. And that is where there will be a copper flashing that is a metal panel that is added on top of that area. And it's for that length of the building. And I also want to share, we have reached out to our environmental consultant who is involved in all the hazardous materials that we found in this project. The company name is Universal Environmental Consultants. I'm going to refer to them as UEC during this meeting. But as per Amar Deeb, who is our lead consultant for the project, there is not a reason to remove any of this as long as the materials remain in good condition and won't be disturbed. His option is that this should remain in place until our building is fully demolished, where that's not part of this project scope at all. So the summary of including that is that while option 1 is the most comprehensive remediation solution, option 1, 2, and 3 are all viable options and compliant with EPA. And they are sort of in the order of the most extensive to the least extensive remediation solutions available to us. So I see Chris has a question.
Just quickly, just want to highlight again that it's not the insulation that has asbestos, but it's essentially the glue that's holding the insulation to the masonry. And Hutter had a recommendation of what option they would want that they stated during the OAC. Do you feel comfortable sharing that just so that we also have that information this evening?
Their option was option 3. Because it and that's why we sought out the professional opinion of our consultant to confirm that that option was fully compliant.
Cool, thank you.
And if I can just add on to that quickly before we take the rest of the hands, because I'm sure everyone has questions. If the insulation, that blue insulation, were to stay in place, the proposal from Hutter, because this new insulation is a little bit thinner than what we were proposing replacing it with, new insulation would go outboard of it with that drainage material too. So we would still be getting the overall thickness that we were planning on for that foundation insulation. We would just be leaving the existing waterproofing adhesive and that blue insulation in place first.
I think, and I believe I am able to see the order of questions, so I'm going to take them in that order. So Glenn is the next question.
Okay, just want to understand if it's $33,000 to do just that west side, that's another, so there's another 175 to do the other side. If we did both sides, it would be 207.
There is, I believe, some along the front of the building as well. So
Okay.
there's you're touching 3 sides of the building, but you should think of it as the 1980 construction, where the foundation was poured in 1980, that is exposed to that is adjacent to the soil.
And
Okay, I'm
the
just trying to-
difference, oh, go ahead.
I'm just trying to understand, but the remaining areas would be 5 times the size of, I'm missing something, because if the west side is that whole purple line that you showed us, and that's 33,000, and it would be 175 to do everything else. That means everything else is 5 times either the length or the involvement of this.
Yeah, so the difference, Glenn, if I may, Jennifer, is that the option 2 purple scope here is just what's above final grade. In
Okay,
option 1 to remediate everything, that would be all of the blue that you're seeing in the picture. Yeah, so there's an additional several feet
okay,
down
all right,
on
thank
both
you.
sides.
Okay, thank you. So it's not really apples and oranges. It's not just a difference.
Right,
It-
right. It's not
Just
just east and west, it's
the
really the
depth.
depth.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Jim Zigowitz has the next question.
Oh, hi. So, could you, for everybody's benefit, I think, could you please describe to us exactly what you mean by remediation? When I see this stuff, it reminds me of something that it's just an old insulation board like we're probably planning on putting out there today, but it's the mastic. Is there a fibrous mastic that they use to adhere that to the building? And what exactly, when you say we're going to remediate, what does that mean? So I guess that's two questions. What is this stuff and what precisely do you mean by remediation?
So it's my understanding that the mastic is more of an adhesive. So it is like a glue-like substance that is maybe I can zoom in. So there is a damp proofing that had been applied against the foundation, and then an adhesive, and then this blue rigid insulation board. And so, it's not the asbestos is contained in that adhesive between the two. So the remediation would require that they tent the whole area and that they specialized trained personnel wearing full PPE and so forth will come in to do their removal of the blue insulation board, and then also the removal of the adhesive, and then and the specific methodology, Leah, if you know that, please speak up. I don't know what specific tools they will be using to do that, but
Sandblasting. They would have to
sandblasting.
sandblast it.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah,
then
it's very firmly in place.
um,
So,
then disposal of those items.
okay. And I appreciate it. Thank you. So, and I guess that's what my question was leading towards is if, and I could be way off, but my understanding is the stuff gets dangerous when it's friable, right?
Exactly.
When it crumbles and turns to dust and it goes in the air. So in terms of remediation, is there isn't there anything? I mean, there is an alternative called encapsulation we could do, right? Couldn't we spray this whole thing with a half inch of closed cell or something and seal it all up forever? Put your pan over it and you're done.
So
Is that what
Jim,
we're proposing?
yeah, I'll jump in. So this is Kristen Lass.
Hi,
Unfortunately, I
Kristen.
don't have my video. I think that's why we're leaning towards option 3, which is the least invasive, which could
Yeah,
lead to the least amount of schedule delays and the least amount of potential additional issues once we actually get in there. And it is a lot easier to understand what the remediation is. So I know there's a lot of other questions. And I know our time is limited with Mike, but perhaps we should focus on the Hutter's recommendation number 3, which is the least expensive, which is the least amount of work, which is the least amount of schedule delay, and would be less of a risk moving forward.
yeah. I'll second that motion.
I think the next question is with Jean.
Yes, thanks. I concur with option 3. It's pretty typical in the industry to uh, encapsulate, as Jim says. If it's undisturbed, just make sure it's not disturbable in the future of our project. Um, and so a question will be, is there you know, is there another layer of encapsulation that's necessary, or are you comfortable with now I'm going to take that question back. I think you're comfortable with that. So my question would is that with this 18,000, when they do the remediation of of only the disturbed areas, and then you apply your new blue board, your new foundation insulation to this. Are are we going to miss anything that we would have liked to have from a energy, environmental sustainability perspective? Is anything going to be thicker that will change your detailing of this? I'm just wondering about the ramifications of the design when they if they only do option 3, and um, how that relates to that middle panel that's going over it. And then I
Leah,
have a second part of my question.
yeah, I think Leah should take that question for the,
Yeah, sure. So as far as the thermal performance, I think the key consideration for us, since we're not putting back new material, is to make sure that we can get it at the proper height, because that was one thing we were trying to achieve, but we are lowering grade on this side, which is why there is going to be portions of the foundation that are exposed, which is not the case on the east side. So doing things in a detailing way as far as making sure that we're lapping seams so that new insulation is going across existing seams so that we help with the performance in that capacity. And then as far as the metal panel and the thickness of material that's covering over, I think that's going to take some work with Hutter in the field to understand exactly what portions of the material is being removed, how thick what's remaining is, where that grade line is, so that we can make sure that that detail is properly done. I don't anticipate major changes compared to what we already had in the design documents, but that is something that we'll want to take a closer look at once we know what direction the joint committee wants to head in.
Okay. And then my second question is, when the asbestos was being removed off the roof, I did not see any tenting. I only saw the people in their white outfits. I would request that when you remediate this area and any future asbestos, to do it fully tented so that it doesn't go out into the atmosphere.
is my understanding that that is, was the intent for this work on this side, is to, option 1, 2, or 3 to tent as much as required. Option 3 being a significant amount of tenting and sort of less and less tenting required as you reach down to option 3. But point taken, Jean. I
Thank you.
understand. Yep.
Yep, thanks.
Next question is Megan.
Hey, thanks. I've had some of them answered already, but I just want to clarify. Um, so it sounds like we're saying option 3 is encapsulation. Is that what I'm hearing from everyone? Because I'm leaning towards that as well, for a number of reasons. But if it is encapsulation, that leads to a question about tenton that was just brought up. And if the purpose of encapsulation is to cover undisturbed areas to ensure that they remain undisturbed. Is it required to have tenton in place for that? Or is that just something that will make people feel good, for lack of a better term? I'd certainly understand if we were going to remove everything, we're disturbing it, absolutely tent it. But if we're encapsulating undisturbed areas, um, are there any regulations that require it? Number one is, I guess, what I'm asking.
So in option 3, we're only going to remediate an area that is disturbed by our construction. So it's much more limited than what's diagrammed here in this purple color. And that's where we would the remainder of it is encapsulated. So it is a combination of both encapsulation and remediation. Remediation only at the limited areas where it's disturbed. In terms of the I could get an answer to the committee on specifically what is required for tenting when encapsulating. I don't have the answer to that question. Unless, Leah, unless you have that answer, I don't.
Or perhaps as the committee, we just say honor all required regulations, and then we don't need to become experts at asbestos removal.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yes.
There you go.
But don't shortcut any regulations.
To
Agreed.
be clear, I'm not asking anyone to make shortcuts. Absolutely not. I just want to make sure that we're not unnecessarily doing more for appearance's sake. But if it's required, if there are disturbed areas, then absolutely.
No, it's a good question.
Tom?
Yeah, I assume in option 3 that disturbed area means areas that the insulation was crumbling. Is that a correct assumption? Because why would you remediate something that's not crumbling if you're going to encapsulate?
We are not remediating anything that is not crumbling. Like
Okay.
anything that's undisturbed is not being remediated.
Well, the word disturbed, you mean by disturbed crumbling?
No.
Then I'm
No,
confused.
No, I think there are areas of the foundation that are being exposed because the design is changing, and I think Leah can
Well,
get more detail to that. I think that's my understanding.
if it's exposed but it's not crumbling, there's no, you haven't, you're not seeing the adhesive, which is where the asbestos is. That's why I'm confused.
So I think that's the the line between options 2 and option 3. Option 2 would be any of the areas, that purple area in Jennifer's diagram that she shared,
Right.
anything that's going to be above grade in its final condition is what we are considering to be the exposed. And so that would be if we remediated everything in that zone. Option 3 is more for those conditions, like you were saying, Tom, things that were crumbling or cannot be properly encapsulated and need to be removed. So it would be smaller portions of that purple zone.
That's
Only
why that
anything.
price comes down so far.
Yeah.
The other question is, have you looked at any of the other places where you wanted to add insulation to see if anything else is crumbling?
So we have not exposed the driveway side yet.
We could run
But
into this problem again.
because the driveway side does not need to be, there was never any intention to expose portions of the foundation on the driveway side. Grade remains the same on that side. Then the possibility for disturbance in the same way on the driveway side is far less than on the church side.
So we're not even going to look on the driveway side.
There will be some excavation on that side for a perimeter drain and to add the sidewalk, but it's going to be far less of an impact than on the church
So
side.
if we look, we could find it.
I think now that we understand the condition on the church side, then the direction to the construction team will be to proceed very carefully so that we don't disturb what we are trying not to disturb on the driveway side.
Okay. That
I-
doesn't change my mind that we should go with option 3. I'm just
I'm trying to answer your questions
yeah,
as
no,
best we
you're trying
can.
to answer your question. That's fine, but we could be back here again, but that's fine.
I just had a couple questions related.
Yep.
I thought when you encounter asbestos, there was a 10-day notification window. Does that apply to this, or does it not apply because it's such a small area? And I thought during that 10-day notification period, you can't work.
I'm not aware of that. We had a suspect material, and our methodology was that all work ceased in that area, and we contacted our hygienist to come out to the area and do the testing, which I believe was within a 24-hour period of the discovery to then having the testing performed. But at this point in time, I'm not aware of a 10-day notification. I will, Mike, look into that.
I think it's only for abatement, but I've ran into a 10-day notification and I just wanted to confirm. I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking. And the reason I ask is because if there was a 10-day notification period, I would assume that would be added on to the 5 days in option 3. That's the only reason I'm asking, to make sure that when we talk about 5 days, that's specific to the work we're doing, not necessarily other factors. And I just want to make sure that is fully understood if there's going to be an other indirect impact.
Yes. And the reason why option 1 says 6 to 8 weeks, which is obviously a bit vague, is because we are trying to ascertain the impacts to, for example, other trades. So I respect that question. I will confirm, but the project was fully registered as we did have anticipated abatement in this project. We had testing of areas before we started construction, and then we had an abatement scope and plan, and there have been other items that have been abated. And we have had other items that have been smaller discoveries of items, and we've addressed them.
I have no concerns with what anyone's done to this point. All I'm trying to do is just double check a question to make sure that if we're making a vote on the understanding it's a 5-day delay, that we're not surprised by a 10-day notification period that adds 2 more weeks. That's the only intent of my question. So we fully understand the true impact of schedule. That's it. It's not to question that we did anything wrong. I don't think we did. The next question I have is just, there are 2 questions, but they overlap each other. We touched on it, but I definitely think a contractor may try to say there's additional costs, especially if we revise a detail to leave existing insulation and that modifies a panel detail. So I think we should just note that the 18,000 would be just to address the abatement. It wouldn't be to address a metal panel coordination cost that may arise or may not arise. Hopefully not arise, but it could. And then the second part of that is just, if we're adding over existing insulation, are we fastening through that insulation, and does that consider disturbing it?
Good question.
So if we're going to add a second layer of insulation and just leave it, but we're drilling a fastener through the insulation, wouldn't that be disturbing the mastic?
Leo, could you speak to that with your detail?
It's a good question. The intent was not to be fastening through. The intent was to lay the new insulation up with the drainage board and then use the backfilling pressure to hold the foam in place. But if additional fastening is required, then that is something we would need to look into.
Okay, or maybe we could glue it to the outside of it instead of using fasteners.
Yes, I think it's a very good point that we wouldn't want to be using fasteners because we do not want to touch that existing mastic material.
Yeah, because I think we'd have to make sure that that's extremely clear in the detail. Like, say the words, "Do not use fasteners of any kind" in that in that work, to make sure that we've done our part to say, we know there's asbestos here. You cannot perform this scope of work. You have to do this means and methods, non-negotiable kind of thing.
And I guess that applies to attaching the metal panels that would
That's where I was going with this next. Yeah, because if you're attaching a metal panel, that, I'm not a metal panel expert, but I think needs a fastener, and they're going to want to probably go, there's some detail, I'm assuming, going to structure or through something. I'm very interested in how that detail changes for fastening the metal panel to board, because let's say we added 4 inches to it. Obviously, there's the complication of now you have a different dimension than you planned at a certain elevation. That's not throughout the building. But on top of that, your fastener depth you don't want to only put it into the secondary board that it's not going to be supported by anything.
Yes, okay, I'm not still on mute. So we do need to take a closer look at that metal panel detail and how it comes down and works with the board below. It does get regulated, for anyone who knows what that term means, up into the brick. So it will go up a brick course and then get notched into the mortar joint of the brick. And that's how it's held in the top. So the top portion of it will be higher than that insulation and that mastic. So the fastening point will be outboard of the area of concern. But once you start going down to cover this material, that is something that we'll need to have a discussion with the contractor on the best way to do that without fastening through to touch the contaminated material.
And I know you won't know this answer right now, but does your gut tell you that they can do that without fastening? And I ask the question because these are, I think, things that you don't know right now, and I don't expect you to know. And the reason I say that is, as a committee, we're asking to vote for an $18,000 option. And I'm just speaking outwardly here. I don't think we fully understand the other impacts from this $18,000 scope of work. I think if we say yes, we might incur additional cost that from other contractors, other details, other things. Worst case scenario, we put ourselves in a position to need option one or a portion of option one when we've already incurred cost, or we incur additional cost from another contractor that far exceeds the $18,000. And I think we're too premature to vote on this. I think that has to be exactly understood, soup to nuts, top to bottom, with every trade impacted before we can make an educated vote on what we're voting for. That's just my opinion.
So, Mike, I do want to caution us that if we do proceed down that pathway, right now, this is causing planned work we've asked Hutter to move to other areas of the building. There is only so much time and work that they can do that for. So while your questions are appreciated and that may not be the case, that we know all of the, if there is an influence to something else, what we would want to seek from this committee is that your preference is for option 1, 2, or 3, so that, most importantly, we're not hearing from the committee, everyone prefers option 1, because if that was the case, we'd want to move forward and give Hutter that information. If instead option 3 is to try to move forward to just remediate only the disturbed areas, it's a very different perspective of how we're moving forward and giving Hutter direction.
I understand that, Jennifer, and you're doing a good job trying to push the schedule, but it's foolish to make a decision that incurs additional costs that we don't know yet. And I think that's what this committee needs to decide on. Or do we want to? I think my gut tells me, as a committee, everyone seems to like option 3. It makes the most sense, but we don't want to back ourselves into a corner and have a big surprise here. That's what's concerning me, and that's why I'm vocalizing it.
Mike, is it the fact that we as a committee want to say that we like option 3, but we would like the full impact of option 3 to be known so that we actually know the price tag?
Yeah,
I don't think we know the price tag of option 3 right now.
I think as a committee, we can vote officially, but we're saying we want to proceed with 3. That's our goal. But in tandem, as they prep to execute that work, we are asking for a fast response from our architect and our subcontractor to coordinate together and ensure that there's no other impact we're not seeing right now.
Right. And if we have to meet again in order to vote the final cost, because I assume we'll have to vote the final cost again, because I think I agree with you, it's not going to be $18,000. I think it's going to be more.
Yeah, and
if we
I
have
think
to, we
that
can meet again.
Yeah, but I think, Jennifer, we can give you clear direction today. Option 3 is the direction we want to proceed with, but we're asking for a consideration on the side to happen immediately or as fast as possible to make sure that we don't back ourselves into a corner and a metal panel sub says, I can't install that detail now.
I thank you, Mike. That was my big concern, that we'd like to leave tonight's meeting with clarity on those 3 options, and then that will give Hutter the ability to move forward, which is really our biggest concern right now.
And I see that Jim and Jean raise their hands, and I do really have to go shortly. I can hang on a few minutes past 7:15 so we can wrap this discussion up. But do you guys have a couple quick questions before we wrap this one up?
Yes. So my quick one would be, it would be helpful for me to see if there were a slate of activities, or what are the actual construction processes that are being obstructed by leaving this thing exposed right now while we get these answers. And I'd like to tie that into, I think, what Tom was saying about moving around to the other side. Seems to me like we have a problem identified, but we don't have the entire scope identified. We don't have the driveway side identified. It'd be nice to get that identified, and then we could wrap this whole thing. 'Cause we know we're going to take a hit on that one as well. Probably not as much, maybe not as much. I don't know. But it seems like we need to get that sort of all in hand. I would like to see that get all in hand rather than, let's take care of this little spot and then we'll figure out the next spot later. So if we could get a quick presentation on what construction processes are going to be slow, therefore pushing that construction schedule even longer. I'd love to see that, because it seems to me like this stuff it's okay. Nobody wants to be bashing on it. Nobody wants to be chipping away at the stuff. It's covered by the insulation board, and I don't think the stuff is friable to begin with. So it could be exposed. You could be staring at it from 2 feet away, and nobody's going to be getting it in their lungs. That's just my opinion. But yeah, if we could, you have that sort of a synopsis on what this is impeding and why we can't, be charging ahead on the inside of the building. I'm curious to hear that too. But that's it. That's all.
Thank you, Jim. And so we can work to get that to you. I have a question for the committee. If we were able to get some answers to this, is one pathway forward for us to prepare a memo to the committee, so that perhaps there's information you can get in advance. I know if we need a committee meeting, there's a time frame to getting something on the books and so forth. And I think we do have another meeting scheduled for July 15th. And so we absolutely could address these questions for July 15th, but
what I'd say to that, Jennifer, is we have a requirement in the town to submit an agenda for public notice. There's nothing preventing us from submitting that notice first thing tomorrow morning and saying we're going to have a meeting Thursday, for example, and just getting it on a calendar. We can cancel the meeting. We don't have to hold it, but at least the tough part here is, and maybe Kristen can jump in here and tell me where Kristen disagrees. This is some important information we need to at least understand. So I don't know if we should officially vote yes on an option, but we can vote to make a recommendation pending further information to be verified at a future meeting within the next 4 business days in order to not delay schedule. If this decision has to be made tonight or it delays schedule, we could make a recommendation with a caveat. We're going to meet with the opportunity to reconsider on Thursday. But I think tomorrow we should post an agenda specifically for this, pick a date, get it on a calendar. It's an important decision. And I could be dead wrong, but I have a feeling there's impacts that could come out of this. And I just think it's in our best interest to figure those out before we get too far down this solution. But I also recognize that we can't sit here and think about it for 3 weeks and then not make a decision. We need to make a decision now. That's how I see it. If anyone sees it differently, let me know.
So Mike, I'll just jump in before we go and schedule meetings, right? So Jennifer, I would like to hear from you and Leah, if we can give you the indication and direction that we feel that option 3 is the best option, knowing that there may be other ancillary items that could come up while we're planning this out and investigating. Do you feel that we need to schedule an extra meeting before July 15th? Or do you feel that that would give your team the adequate time to go through the proper investigation of the costs and other potential items that the committee members here tonight have brought up? Or do you feel that there's a different pathway? You all have been closer to this than I have. In addition, Chris Karpinski has been close to it as well. So I would like to get your recommendation this evening for our next path forward before we just jump ahead and schedule a special meeting.
I'll offer my opinion, and Leah and Chris, please offer yours. And first of all, I said July 15th. It's July 13th, Monday, is the date of our next meeting. But my opinion is that if that is 3 weeks from today, that will afford our team to answer these questions. I am happy to, if other people, in the next 24, 48 hours are thinking of other questions from the committee, if they can share them with us, then we can add them to things we're addressing. But we could, there's a time impact to any remediation work, and we're trying to get that scheduled and underway. We have a national holiday in the midst of some of this time. So I think that maintaining our meeting on the 13th of July would be the appropriate choice, with a recommendation from the committee tonight to proceed with option 3. And we will investigate the impacts of other trades that are affected, the schedule, and additional costs. And that will leave Leah's team enough time to revise details and work them through, and some meeting time and back and forth to work those details through with the subcontractors that are affected. It would be very, very challenging for us to get complete answers to all these questions by, for example, later this week. I just don't think that that's feasible.
And I think every complete answer would have risk, because this building continues to have secrets that it slowly exposes to us. So we could have answers, but they could also be wrong if we need to get them in short order. So I think just, I certainly appreciate worrying about how much this cost option 3 would escalate. And I also agree that there's going to be other follow-on change orders that'll be associated with this. But I think especially if we haven't excavated the side of the driveway yet, we don't fully understand this. So if we are to approve the not to exceed $18,000 this evening, then it necessarily needs to come back to this committee for anything above and beyond this. However, is it going to expand to approach $200,000 from $18,000? I think not. So, it's still, maybe all 3 options are bad, but this is the least bad option we need to go down.
Yeah, and Chris, I think you touched on it. I think we do have to approve it, because they're not going to be able to proceed without an approval, right, Jennifer? So we do need to make an approval, not a recommendation, that we need to approve and not to exceed 18,000. So a PCO can be issued.
But we don't know the full extent of the PCO yet. Why would we even do that?
Because we can't authorize additional work that's not owned. So even given a recommendation to proceed, it's almost meaningless in terms of the contract world to the sub. There's no approval given.
Right.
So
I guess that's what I'm lost about the ongoing processes, because it does this without approval tonight. I think we're all in agreement that there is there's a method that we would all probably prefer, right? We would probably prefer to encapsulate and not sandblast the building over. Don't touch the stuff. Don't get it out in the open. But what have we stopped if we don't say, okay, let's get that done right now, cover it up, get it all sealed up, and that's what I was hoping to understand. I want to get my arms around what are we holding up by not moving forward with a vote tonight on that.
So,
Jim, even items like getting conduits into the building or getting the transformer pad set are impacted by this. These are things I don't know definitively, but I've heard Hutter mention them specifically during the OAC meeting. So it unfortunately starts, greatly, adding complexity to the dependency tree of what they can move forward on.
Well, be sure, but those are known items. Those are quantifiable. I can point my finger at it that you need to get a conduit from the transformer into the building through the foundation, right? The project is known. The length, the width, the breadth of the project is known. Those kinds of things that need to penetrate the foundation, that we need to screw around with the foundation on. We should know those, right? There's no surprises there.
I agree. There could be an enumerated list here. I think also with site materials, there's limited space on that side of the building. When you're dealing with an open trench, you don't want to be doing work near it. So It starts expanding quickly. I certainly don't have the exhaustive list, but there is a bit of a cobweb of dependencies there that they've been working through the last couple of weeks to try to get around this while this committee meets to discuss this.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I guess that's what I would be looking for, Chris, is the things that need to happen, right? I'd love to see that list that, you know what, you have to get through we need this power through the wall in the next 2 weeks, therefore we're gonna have to disturb the wall, not just this piece is exposed, what do we want to do with it? Does that make sense?
yeah. So
Because that's it.
if I could, Jim,
Yeah,
I'm hoping that this answers your question at least a little bit, and I don't have the exhaustive list, but I think one of the major concerns from Hutter and their subs right now is access on this side of the building because it is excavated so deep and it is hard for anyone to get access to this side of the building. So the transformer pad is one thing that has been mentioned. Edge of roof work, so hanging gutters, and the brickwork is also starting. The mason is on site, starting on the other side and where they have access, but they cannot continue to the side of the building until this area is filled in. So it's those sorts of construction activities that are going to be impacted shortly. Right now, they
awesome.
have areas to work, but
That's what I wanted to hear, Leah. I was like, yeah, okay. If you can't get staging up there, you can't do the masonry work, you can't get conduits into it. That's sort of what I was hoping. Now it makes sense to me. Okay, now we can do that an $18,000 partial uh, uh, fix for this entire solution makes sense, right? Okay, I wasn't really with that. I was grappling with why we're not doing the whole thing at once, but that to me clarified it. Uh, so thank you for
But
that.
I think Glenn had something, and then I'd like to move to vote because I have to go.
Yeah, no, I think it was just answered. I was wondering whether a not to exceed amount wouldn't address the issues that had been raised. So
Yeah, and
while
Jennifer,
we figure other things out. So
and Jennifer, to recap, this is, for lack of a better way to explain it, a starting point. We're getting started with this $18,000 scope not to exceed to accomplish a certain task. And there may be more impact that we're going to figure out and present to the committee as applicable, but you need this 18,000 approved to get schedule going.
That's correct.
So then, in that case, I'm going to make a recommendation to approve option 3 of PCO 82 for approval of the not to exceed amount of $18,000 with a note that the team will review other trade impacts and present those as soon as possible to the team, understand the full scope needed for this applicable change.
And I'll second that recommendation as a motion.
yes. Yep,
Call for a vote.
so moved. Yep.
Okay. Here's our voting. Dirks, aye. Fleckner,
Aye.
Riegert,
Aye.
Secor,
Aye.
Siegel. Is
Aye.
Zoom?
Sorry. I
That's
had
okay.
audio off.
That's okay. Teal,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hazelton not here. Karpinski,
Aye.
O'Connell,
Aye.
Patton,
Aye.
Roberts,
Aye.
Winberg,
Aye.
Zegowitz.
Ah, no, I'm not going to vote for that. Nay, it'll still pass, right? Thank you.
12-1-0.
All right, Jennifer, I do have to go. I apologize, team, but if needed, Jennifer, feel free to give me a call tomorrow, or I can talk to someone and we can talk about anything open, but I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you, Mike. So I'm going to continue on to the next topic. Since Mike was leading the meeting, I don't know who is taking over for him.
Lynn, are you available to take over?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So the next PCO is related to what's covered in Bulletin 18, but it is related to existing roof plywood replacement and truss treatment. So we have a value of not to exceed $42,695,000 for this. I want to point out that this started off with a value of over $100,000, partly because of a lot of coordination and communication with Hutter and identifying the scope. But this is an unforeseen existing condition. That's our reason for this issue. There was some presence of mold that was discovered in the roof sheathing of the east and west wings of the existing portion of the building. Again, we're talking about the 1980s construction area. We engaged our hygienist, which is, as I mentioned, UEC, same company. They investigated the extent of the mold that had grown on the sheathing, and we identified areas as follows. There were some on the east wing, and then also on the west wing. The specific comments are here. We discussed options for that, and our consultant favors removal and replacement of the affected plywood as the most affordable solution, and also the application of a mold inhibitor on the truss surfaces. We want to comment that in the contract documents, there had been included a percentage of plywood replacement. That's very standard when there's a roof replacement. If anyone here has had their own roof replaced, they're probably familiar with that. Typically, so the Feingold team did include a percentage of roof replacement in the contract documents. This description above exceeded that percentage, and the not to exceed cost acknowledges that that percentage in the scope. So very specifically, there was a 10% of the roof area had been bought in the scope to replace, and this cost is the exceeding of that value. And some of this reasons why this cost has gone down so much is because there's been very explicit calculations done by Feingold, and then also the team for Hutter team to quantify exact amounts of roof sheathing replacement. And so that I have a few images of the area here, of the roof condition. You can see this image I shared because it shows the existing roof next to our new roof trusses. The new roof trusses are more of an orange color in appearance right now versus the 1980s construction, which look a little bit more weathered in this. But what we're talking about is on the existing roof portions. And then you can see some of the plywood has been removed, which is the lower picture. So these are from April of 2026, these images. And so we are recommending that this PCO be approved as not to exceed. We believe that this number 42,695 is a fairly strong number. I don't know that we should expect it to really diminish because we've been going back and forth on this for a bit of time now. So I feel pretty confident that 42,695 is going to be the final number, but it definitely won't exceed that number at all. Chris, do you have a question?
Sorry, in addition to the mold issues, there was further deficiencies found in the 80s construction of missing sheathing underneath the overframed roof portions. Does this PCO 59 include that sheathing that was needed, that was missing, or was that explicitly removed from 59 here? I just want to add in credit that that is also being addressed, and that's part of 59. I just wanted to make sure that the committee understood that there's more than just mold. There's also structural deficiencies with the 80s roof that are being addressed.
So that is a separate PCO for the missing plywood, which is required
Awesome.
per the structural engineer. So two separate items, that cost is not included here. I would like to note, though, because there has been such tight coordination with the design team and the construction team on the sheets of plywood, the larger portion perhaps of this cost is related to that treatment of the trusses rather than the plywood itself.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to note too that when I walked through the building, right when demo started, this condition was immediately obvious that due to air escaping, moisture-laden air escaping the 80s construction, it was already deteriorating and sheathing as soon as the building was exposed.
All right, any other questions about 59?
I've got a quick question, hopefully.
Oh, Megan, sure.
One, can you give us maybe the breakdown of how much of this cost is for the um, mold inhibitor treatment and how much is specifically for replacing the plywood sheets, number one. Number two, can you tell me how much, I know you mentioned the original contract had estimated 10% of the plywood would need to be replaced. How much above the 10% does this involve? And the third question is the mold inhibitor only going to be applied on those portions underneath the affected plywood, or is it going to go to all the roof trusses?
So I can answer, I think, questions 1 and 2. I'll ask Leah about question 3, but so the breakdown of the cost, if this is $42,695, it's approximately $10,000 or so is the value of the plywood to this cost. The mold inhibiting treatment is about $30,000 of that cost in rough numbers. So the and then there's a general contractor fee, which represents the other $2,600 or so in rough numbers. The 10% that was owned approximates to about 15 sheets of plywood. And so our project utilized, I believe this work related to specifically this PCO, as we're mentioning, not what Chris and Leah were just talking about with the missing pieces in the overbuild, but just the pieces that had the identified in mold. So it's the 4 bullets in the middle of this slide. That represents 49 sheets of plywood. And that's and then they credited because they had a bill of sale for 49 sheets of plywood, they additionally credited us for 15 sheets of plywood. So the proposed change order has the 49 sheets plus a credit for the 15. And that's how that was calculated. And then Leah, the application of the mold inhibitor, do you have an answer to that question?
I don't have a specific answer as far as the existing building and which of the trusses would be sprayed, though, because the affected plywood was the lowest portions on both sides, that would affect quite a number of trusses. What I can say more confidently is that it would not be any of the new trusses because those are of a different ilk than the existing. So the mold inhibitor, I believe, is only being applied to those existing trusses.
And I'm looking at the description by the installer. It's they state that it's the trusses to be sprayed to the point of saturation and left to dry, and drying occurs within a couple of hours at any temperature above 55 degrees. So that is so it is, I believe, all sides of that are exposed in the trusses of the, I'll call them the 1980s trusses. Jim?
Jim?
Are all sheets of plywood exposed or that have mold on them, are they all being removed? Is that how this is
Yes.
working? And so
Yes.
are we to understand that applying the mold inhibitor to the underside of the plywood is a more expensive alternative than replacement of the plywood? Is that what I'm sort of figuring?
Do you want to start, Jennifer, or do you want me to take it?
You can take that.
So this was a question that we asked our hygienist for their best recommendation, and while the plywood could be treated, it was determined that the most cost-effective and best for the long-term performance of the plywood was to replace it. The trusses, because there were no major signs of them being affected. It was more of a precautionary to take care of the few spots that they did see and to help the longevity of the trusses that was recommended to do the treatment on the trusses, but it would not necessarily take care of the entire problem long term if the plywood was simply treated rather than being replaced.
Other questions? Jean?
Yeah, thanks. Just trying to understand this. I've never heard of mold growing on trusses on other projects, and I'm just wondering, does the hygienist know, or do they say the mold is growing because the old building was inadequately ventilated and the new building will be adequately ventilated and therefore there should not be mold growing in the future? Or is it because the wood was a poor quality wood back in the 80s? Or what is the reason for this mold growth on trusses? Because if the biggest cost we have is the truss treatment, it sounds like the plywood is a easy change. You know, put in new plywood, get rid of the old mold. But all of because you said you only found mold on a few trusses, but we're treating all the trusses.
Gene, from what I observed in the building, I only noticed last fall uh, the mold on the bottom of the sheathing. And that's consistent with your experience of moisture-laden air escaping the envelope of the building and condensing on a cold surface of the roof. I did not observe any mold at that time on the trusses, nor did I look specifically for it. I think there was also concern that as the building was exposed through the winter, that the mold issue may have evolved a little bit, and that may be where it progressed onto the trusses. And so that might be where that came from, but I don't have the specific information to say the mold was there or not there on the trusses when the building was first opened up. I only observed it directly on the sheathing on both east and west wings.
So if you think that the mold developed while the building was open to the air, I question why the building was open to the air for so long. And is that a contractor's means and methods problem that they should have put up some sort of plastic across all the windows and not let it be open?
Yeah, and I don't know if the plastic might even make it worse, but specifically if the building was heated all winter long, it would prevent that situation. But I I think that at this point it was really replace the sheathing because that's easy to do, and then treat the trusses because that's easy and sufficient to do
I'm just
from the hygiene
wondering if it's a
from the hygienist
contractor needs
perspective.
to eat it, a little bit of means and methods that if he didn't do enough preparation of the building through the course of the winter.
And perhaps that's how we went from 107K to 43K. I'm not sure.
Does anyone on the design team have an answer for that?
Um, Protecting the building in the weather would traditionally be a contractor means and methods responsibility. We have not specifically had that conversation uh, related to this PCO on whether that was the primary contributing factor to the mold on the trusses or not.
But you didn't see it a year ago when you opened it up. You saw it now after the end of the winter.
I didn't not see it last fall. I only noticed it on the sheathing, so I cannot say that there was not mold on the trusses last fall, unfortunately.
But nobody brought it up before that, and no one got a hygienist in until now. I'm just wondering, there's just questions that have not been answered about how it got that way. And if the trust treatment is absolutely necessary.
The trust treatment is the recommendation of UEC. That's
Okay,
as a
I go back to my question of, should it have been a means and methods? Is it a cost that the contractor should pay for because he inadequately um, enclosed an existing building through the course of the winter? All my buildings are adequately closed through the course of the winter if there's an existing building that's opened up.
So perhaps the question can be, if the committee agrees or does not agree that this work needs to be done, and then if the design team and the town staff can go back to review if we can further lower the cost or not, would that be amenable to the joint committee?
That's a good response. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So-
Any other questions?
is that a motion?
It's the start of a motion.
Could you run that by us one more time, Kristen? That was,
So I'll repeat myself and then someone could say so moved if they agree.
Yeah.
So that the joint committee would approve PCO 59 in concept related to the work with the value not to exceed the 42,695, with the understanding that the design team and town staff would further review the presence of mold and the timing of that and potentially reduce the cost associated with the work.
So moved.
Seconded. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Jean and Glenn.
Mhm.
And here's our voting. Dirk's aye, Fleckner. Is
Marion?
Sorry, I apologize. Yep, I was on mute. Aye.
all right. Riegert,
Aye.
Secor,
Aye.
Siegel,
Aye.
Teal,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hazelton not here, Karpinski,
Aye.
O'Connell,
Aye.
Padden not here, Roberts,
Hi.
Wimberg,
Aye.
Degowitz.
can I ask one quick question to follow up since I'm the last vote anyways?
Sure.
Have all roof areas been open to identify this condition throughout the building, or is there other processes that'll come along later where we'll have to open the roof?
I believe there's one area in the center front of the building that has not been opened yet. An older construction of the building, not 80s. And I think there's less concern as there was different materials there, but I'll let Leah chime in on those details specifically.
Yes, so Chris is right. The 1980s wings have all been opened, so we've been able to see all conditions of the plywood in the 1890s. The 1980s portion has been, they're working on that now. They have done preliminary investigations from the inside. When we were first talking about this topic, there was less concern about that area. It's not plywood, it's actually boards, wood boards there too. So it's a different material. And we didn't notice the same problem, or I can't say myself, the Hutter team did not notice the same problem from what they've seen on the 1890s portion. So my understanding is it has all been observed at this point.
Thank you.
I'm sort of flipped up to the last slide, which is just that ongoing progress slide. And this happens to be from June 17th. So it's a fairly recent photograph. of the construction.
So while that's up, Buffy, if you just want to call what that vote was so that we don't get off
Yes.
track and we can finish that vote.
Thank you, Kristen. That was 12-0-0.
Thank you.
All right, does that take us on to, how do you want to approach the other ones, Jennifer?
So I'm just going to move through them. I think they should be hopefully simpler. PCO 39 is for the scope related to Bulletin 6, and this is interior tile and tile accessory scope. So the value of this is $21,966. It had a slightly larger initial value, though this is related to a design change. This bulletin was issued after coordination with tile shop drawings and subsequent meetings with the library interiors group. So we have members of that group represented here tonight: Ellen Rainville, Christina Liedberg, and Jean Roberts.
Responding, the DOJ statement says it takes unlawful obstruction of federal law.
Okay. We have there were in the coordination process, certain products were found to be discontinued, others requiring replacement, and then there were other revisions that were made. This was happening last fall, and then we have these were incorporated into a bulletin that was prepared by the design team. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is just images from that bulletin. I'm not sure that this will fully convey revisions and changes to that, but that's, it's encompassing to multiple areas of the building. But these all resulted in changes beyond the additional scope, beyond the original scope of the drawings, and led to this increase in the project costs. So we are recommending approval of this. And the value, as I mentioned, is $21,966.
Okay. Jennifer, can you just explain what tiles are in this context? The tiling?
Tiles that we're dealing with in this context are floor tiles and wall tiles. Some areas specifically that would be directly affected in this would be restrooms, for example. But then also, in this diagram, you're seeing the floor tile that's there's floor tile throughout large portions of the lobby area.
Okay. Okay. Any questions about 39? Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, question about how much of the 21,000 or almost 22,000 is due to change in material cost, and how much, if any, is related to increased installation costs based on that change?
It looks like out of the value of this, approximately $19,000 is related to tile flooring costs. Trying to understand the breakout really quickly here. Well, actually, it's just tile. Sorry, that as I'm looking through breakout documents, there's it's wall and tile revisions. I feel like I'm not answering your question properly, Megan. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me ask you a different question, which is somewhat related. What's the incremental or percentage increase in this? Again, I see it's about 22,000, but what was the original budget for this tile work? Are we talking about, 10% increase? Are we talking about 50% increase? Can you give us some indication?
I'm pulling up our our tile costs. So I'm just gathering that number.
Well, and I guess more specifically, not just total original tile cost, but for the tile that's no longer available, how much was budgeted for that? And how much of the does this 22,000 represent an increase over that specific subset of tile?
So the first question, to answer that first question, the tile value for the project, and this is material and installation, the value is 196,000. So, we're just, let's call it $200,000 for a round number here. And the we had, it appears that we've got one, two, three, four different tiles that were affected, and the manner at which this was created is that a credit was provided for each of those and a new cost added for them. And the as it's for 4 different tiles,
Okay.
it's challenging for me on the spot
Yeah,
to
no,
identify sort of
but
the
I just want,
variations of it.
I wonder, Megan, does the sort of higher level answer suffice that it was about a $200,000 budget? So this is
12%.
10%, 10% additional.
Yeah, except the 200,000 is, materials and labor. And, my experience with tile is that a significant portion of that is labor. So if we're saying that this PCO 39 is, primarily due to tile cost increase and not specifically labor, then it's really not 10% increase. It's probably closer to 20% increase for materials alone. And the reason I'm asking is, was there any investigation into um, other options for tiles that would still be within the original budget, if not necessarily, the same, color or texture or that type of thing? Because I totally get that we want, what we designed, what the architecture, planned, but did we look at other alternatives that wouldn't result in increased cost?
Is that once the design change was made, do you mean? So,
Leah, I don't know if you're able to, like, the history of all of sorry, the revisions to that. We have some of these were discontinued products from when the products were specified. So in that manner, some of these we did not have a choice about if it was a discontinued product. I just don't know if you, Leah, could speak to the process of selection of alternatives.
So I can speak a bit, and I will say, and I think everybody on this meeting knows that we've worked very closely with Stafira, our interior designer, so they know the ins and outs of all of these selections. And while Frankel worked very closely with them, it was their specific selections, which is why I know this topic, but I do not know the ins and outs of it quite to the level that I know some of the other aspects of the building. But what I can speak to is that the way that the process occurred from the beginning is that because of Massachusetts public bid, there were 3 products that were, or 3 manufacturers that were selected in our specifications. There was one preferred option that we presented to the interiors group that Jennifer noted before. But there were also some alternates that Stafira had selected as well, understanding that when it is a public bid environment, we do not always get our first choice. So we did want to have some other options available. So the one, at least for that primary floor tile throughout the main spaces, was an alternate that was approved by the interiors group. And all of the other finishes that were part of the look and feel of the building were selected because this tile touches so many aspects of the building. It's a very important selection. And to have to reselect again, for less expensive tiles, that can present a challenge. So because the alternate was available and worked with all of the other finishes that had been selected, Stefira opted to go with that alternate because it had already been vetted by the group. And I see that Jean has her hand raised and she
Yes.
was very much a part of this process.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to weigh in, Jane?
Yeah, I'm
Jean.
just wondering, I don't remember cost being a factor when we were presented with the choices for the tiles. And I assumed that what we were shown were comparable cost to what was in the project originally. Were they not comparable cost?
Obviously not.
Because we should not have been shown different products to choose from that would be a change order. You say they were an alternate. Alternate should be the same price as the bases of design if they were in the project.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot speak to that, but your point is very well taken, Jean.
I'm looking right now at just line by line of the change order. And for example, our main floor tile, what Leah was just referring to, the brand we had originally was Nemo Tile. The alternate that was selected was Creative Materials. So there was, the quantity doesn't change in them, but the Nemo Tile had a value of $20,800 and the alternative had a value of $24,850. And then there's
That,
a
that makes no sense. If the project was bid, they gave you a price for tile. The tile gets chosen from either the basis of design or the two alternates. They don't get more money. This is Massachusetts bidding laws. They don't get more money for the alternate. If they can't get the basis of design, which is one of three products, then they have to give us the next product that they can get without more money for the product.
So should we table this and send it back to them to look at it again?
Mm-hmm. The tile
Yes.
costs the tile costs, and it's any of those three items on there that they get to choose from.
Do we need a motion
Is
to
that-
send it back to them?
Jennifer, is that not their understanding of this?
Could you repeat that, Glenn?
Is that not their understanding of this, that there was a price that applied to any of the alternatives?
I need to confirm that these alternatives are what was on the original scope.
Okay.
I think that's a fair point. I will say that yeah, I need to confirm. I can't
Okay.
state that these are what was on the original documents. If it was a change from that, then a change order is where would be a valid perspective.
So tabling this one until we have that seems like a reasonable approach.
Yes.
Does that cause problems schedule-wise or anything? Jennifer, if we don't vote on that one tonight?
No, I think then what it would mean is that we would bring this back to July 13th.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
so I'm going to move to the next topic, and we can we will table um, um, July 13th.
Okay.
And then, okay. The next topic is PCO 42. This relates to an RFI number 69 related to the geothermal well connections and pump revisions. So the value of this PCO is $39,631 after some initial negotiation where it started at $44,333. The issue at hand is design change, and it's really comes down to missed scope coordination. So what's happening here, I think this diagram helps. I'm going to reference this. The piping connection was the reason for the RFI, and the design team recommended a 1-inch condenser underground piping, and they're including a well loop pump. And so what's really happening is that there is part of the scope was covered on the HVAC drawings. Typically, the HVAC drawings own piping out to a certain extent of the building, and beyond that, it should be covered on a civil drawing. And so what you're seeing here is in blue, the piping was clearly identified in the HVAC drawings, but the portion of yellow piping, which would be required to connect to the geothermal well, was not covered. What you're seeing as a cloud is the full extent of the piping, but the location of blue was owned in the HVAC drawings. So we're talking about essentially a distance of pipe that was not covered in the original scope, as well as a loop pump that is required for functionality of the system. So this is essentially a miss on the drawings because of the overlap of what is on the HVAC drawings versus the civil drawings. And that if this was originally in the documents, the project cost would have been increased for this scope of work. It is not uncovered or unforeseen. It's just scope that was omitted from the documents. And if Leah, if there's anything you believe is not covered here, let me know. But we have reviewed this with the civil contractor or civil engineer and also the mechanical engineer. All of this costs we believe are valid, and we're recommending approval. Megan?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So if I'm understanding this correctly, well, I guess back up a second. It's saying that this was misscope or missed on the drawings. Whose responsibility was it for those drawings? And I do get that, this should have been included in the original proposal in the original budget to begin with, but it wasn't. And I'd be more inclined to be open to sharing the cost on something like this. But I think if, we hire professionals to come up with design drawings for this project and those professionals miss something key like this, there has to be, some shared pain, I think.
So, the scope was missed. That's in terms of, I believe it really is, it would be from the civil engineer to take what is provided by the mechanical engineer to, which is typically a few, just outside of the building. So the mechanical engineer covered a portion of this. In terms of sharing the cost of it, there really isn't a vehicle through this right now to to ask the design professionals to add a cost or to pay for this cost. That is not part of the public construction process. So we don't have that. While it is an error and omission, that is part of why there's a contingency on the project budget. That is not part of the process where they cover part of the cost for errors and omissions.
Well, let me ask it a different way. I think contingency is for other things rather than things that were missed on design drawings, but be that as it may, if if we voted on this tonight and it's not approved, what impact would that have?
So this geothermal well, we have one of them in the project. You have not been involved since day one, so I may be repeating something others know. We did a test well to determine if geothermal was beneficial to the project or viable. We determined that it wasn't viable, but we still had that well. And so to utilize that, we've opted to make that singular well that you already have in the space. We're connecting to it and we'll be utilizing that just for the Mary Atwood room because that's a very isolated room mechanically. So it had the ability for that one well to operate the Mary Atwood room. Without performing this work, the system is not complete. So it just simply does not connect to the building. And so we can't operate that room without a connection to the building. So this bit of yellow in this diagram, this is the geothermal well, and that sort of line of half yellow, half blue is how do you connect back into the building to get into the Mary Atwood room. So they have, they cannot do it without installing both the yellow and the blue, but the blue is covered in the construction scope of work already. And
Jennifer,
Yep.
if I can just add, so if this was included in the drawings, we would be paying out of the budget, and then the contingency amount actually would have been lower. So either way, we would be paying. It's just the different buckets of money. Correct, Jennifer?
That's correct.
No, I understand that, but I think, I feel like we have a responsibility to minimize use of the contingency. No, I understand it's there if we need it, but I don't feel comfortable saying, well, that's what it's for. Let's go ahead and use it. That's my thought. So again, go back to if this were not approved, what are the options? So you're saying that the geothermal would not be used for the Mary Atwood room. So what would be the alternative for heating in the Mary Atwood room at that point?
We would have to modify the other system to now include portions of the Mary Atwood room. So there would be a cost elsewhere to make that design revision and then the construction revision. I don't believe so there would be some other cost for that.
Do we have a comparison or estimate of what that might be so we can make a better informed decision?
I don't know that cost. I don't know if Leah has a cost for that.
I don't know about
And Leah,
the
before you go, Leah, Megan, I
Yeah.
think you're asking really good questions. I think it was always the intention to do the geothermal, both from a sustainability effort and from a cost saving perspective related to an annual heating and cooling cost. So I don't think that it is worth our time to ask FA to do an alternative energy analysis because those aren't the goals that we're trying to reach.
Well, with all due respect, we're asking for another almost $40,000 to finish a connection to a geothermal well that was described a few minutes ago as, it may not have the exact words, but something that was not feasible for the entire building. So I understand the desire to use geothermal and to use it for this room. What I'm struggling with is spending an additional or authorizing an additional $40,000 for that and would like to know what the impact of other alternatives would be. I don't know. It doesn't seem like an unreasonable ask, but I could be wrong.
No, I
Oh,
definitely understand that. I think the main intent was that we always were planning to go geothermal, and we would have paid for this either way out of either the budget with Hutter would have been $40,000 more, or we're paying 40,000 more out of contingency. And I certainly understand your perspective of not paying out of contingency if we don't have to. So I heard you loud and clear on that.
Chris?
Um, Sorry, Kristen, kind of in line with Megan's point, geothermal made a lot of sense if the whole geothermal field was to be built and this building was going to operate off that field. Unfortunately, due to project management issues, they couldn't find the funding to do that. So this well is sort of the literal and figurative example of the sunken cost fallacy. This project should have just abandoned this idea 100% and just not added complexity to the building of having a hybrid approach of multiple heating and cooling approaches to the same building just for one room. There's probably already $100,000 plus just in this one well, and now we're going to do another $40,000. On rough orders, we're never going to have a savings that's going to equal the $150,000 that we're talking about here already. So I don't know if it's honest to say that it's a sustainable goal or a cost savings goal. I think it's just something that was very unfortunate with this project. So I would be in favor of uh, abandoning this well completely and just having one single approach to heating and cooling the building. I think the town and the taxpayers will pay a lot less money over the service life of this building with a simple approach with one contractor servicing one type of system rather than having this hybrid approach. So if if there's sufficient capacity in the VRF system, which is doing 95% of the building or whatever that ratio is, I would be in favor of just spending this $39,000 and making the building a lot more simple and a lot less complex and having one approach that'll be cheaper in the long run.
Nancy?
I know you said that we would pay for it one way or another, and that the general contractor there wouldn't be a mechanism to go back to him. But that's not actually technically correct. There must be a personal lines policy that he has for his oopses that he mistakenly doesn't do. I mean, there's got to be a way for him to get that through his personal lines liability insurance. We should at least check it out.
So I think, Nancy, I think I just want to clarify on what there is a methodology for it would be in the design team for this instance.
Not the
And
contractor.
there is methodologies to go after that. I would say that it would be unlikely to go after something for a value of $40,000. You would, I think, would examine that more holistically at the project. There have been cases of that in the process, and the liability insurance of the professional liability insurance of the design team would be the mechanism for it. But it's not a very direct methodology, and typically that process doesn't happen during the construction of the project. It typically happens at the conclusion of the project when you can sort of see the project wholesale for that value. But I'm not familiar with it ever happening, sort of in the midst of the project for one particular item. It's typically an avenue taken at the conclusion of the project. And it's to compare the design team, really against values that the state of Massachusetts has set for when change orders have an extreme value when they go over a certain percentage in a totality of a project. It's typically not for a singular change order.
I hear you. I still think it's worth investigating, and that would satisfy those that don't want to pay it.
Ellen?
Yes, I'm sorry, because I was actually hoping to find in the accounts exactly how much we paid for the geothermal well, but I won't belabor this because I'm sure everyone is getting tired, but we could not ascertain if geothermal worked on our site unless we dug a test well. The test well showed very positive results. The reason we could not go completely geothermal was because the quote rebates, all of the money for geothermal had to be fronted at the beginning of the project, and there were not adequate funds in hand to wait 2.5 years to receive the rebates, which honestly may not even still be available in the future. But if we don't use the geothermal well, then the cost of digging that well is a cost that we've incurred and lost. So I would really be interested because the Marriott Wood has an archival collection and needs heating and cooling that we really can monitor and adjust. I would be strongly in favor of keeping the geothermal well and having that room be as unique as possible in terms of the HVAC that it's using.
Jim?
Can I guess my eyes sort of glazed over and I missed a little bit of this, but the RFI came in well after the contract was received, awarded, and work had started. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the issue is that there was some line work missing on the contract documents?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And so Jim, what you're seeing that I've circled with yellow and blue,
Yeah.
that is a revision to the drawing, but which came in as a response to RFI
So the
69.
RFI, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
right. I mean, I'm listening. I probably missed that first part. I was doing something else here while I'm listening, and yeah. And typically, I would say, okay, if they missed the scope, they own it, because had they, if we now say, okay, we'll give it to them, because we're good guys, that would have changed their yes, it would have originally changed their contract number, so it could have pushed them out of contention for the project. However, if it's missed line work and it's not really missed scope on their part, it's the deficiency in the drawings is what this is.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, just trying to move this to at least a temporary conclusion.
Glenn,
Jennifer?
could I just weigh in on one piece of
Oh, sure.
information?
Yeah.
I just wanted for the folks who were interested in potentially not using the geothermal system. I am not a mechanical engineer, but I have been involved in a number of coordination meetings with our mechanical engineers and the coordinators on the project. And I cannot speak to whether the particular equipment that we have for the Marriott would currently, whether it could simply be connected to the other systems that we have. I would hesitate to say that that's possible with the current capacity that we have, because we were trying to be very efficient with the systems that we have on the project. So there may not be enough capacity in the system to take on an additional room. And if that's the case, in addition to just potentially needing additional equipment in order to condition this room, there is also not a lot of physical space on the project. So to have to increase the size of something or add another pump or put another unit somewhere near the Marriott Wood room, that would take some additional evaluation on the side of the engineers and the coordinators to make sure that we could actually do that with the system that's available. So just wanted to add that information.
And I'll just share the geothermal test bore cost $42,900. So that's been the cost to date on that.
Gene?
I think we need to table this until we get some of our questions answered, which is basically what Leah just said. She doesn't know if the mechanical system can be
Right.
revised. So we need to find out what's the cost to revise the system. If we don't do this 39,000, it might be equal or more
Right.
to but then I want to say to Leah, I'm not sure you should ask for design change order to do it because it was left out. So that's, up to you and your group to determine how that design change gets done if we agree to a design change.
Yeah, and I agree. It's kind of late in the project to be swinging the design around to abandon this. Just, but it's important to just to fully understand the two options.
I just have to say the euphemism I've consistently used with our design is that it's extremely compact, which is a nice way of saying there is no room for extra storage anywhere in this building. And conduit is already being hung on level 1. So honestly, I think I understand the idea about tabling it, but I really don't know. I was given all the information about all the different heat pumps and how many different rooftop units we had and how many filters we would have to be changing. And I'm not at all convinced that there's room to convert to a different form of energy at this point in this particular building because every square inch is working so hard.
But it's not really converting to a different form of energy. It's just extending the existing system, isn't it? And could we find out how feasible that is before we make this decision?
I move we table this to get the answers to our questions answered by the design team so that we then have two different options to consider.
And before we table that, can we just understand from Jennifer or Leah what this may be holding up, if anything, if we table it till the July meeting?
Yes.
It's my understanding that what you see in blue, that piping length, because it was on the mechanical drawings, I believe they installed that, which was the sort of resultant of issuing RFI 69. So they were looking for permission to sort of proceed with this. I don't believe, Leah, I don't believe this particular item was one of the items that Hutter said. Like, we started off with 82 specifically because Hutter had mentioned it has a major schedule impact. I don't believe this one has the same schedule impact, though getting the answer to that question may result in learning that redesign of a mechanical system could incur a schedule impact. So I think this has the potential to wait until July 13th. But I do believe this blue piping has been installed.
Yes, I can confirm that the blue piping has been installed and pressure tested.
Okay,
And
so
I am
we've
not
already
aware
done
of
part of the
schedule
work.
impacts. Correct.
They've already done part of it. So are we on the hook for part of this anyways, then?
That was the portion that was already in the project,
Okay,
the
that
blue
was
that's been
already-
installed. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we need a formal vote to table it, but Jennifer, if you're saying that you think we can wait, that it could wait until July, then I think it seems like there's enough sentiment on the committee to want to have those answers before we vote on this.
We might have additional questions from Jean and Jim as well.
I just have a comment that I think that the design team and the OPM team keep this in mind for future change orders. This is a committee full of a lot of experts and a lot of people that are very curious. And I think you should come to future change order meetings with more information to to prove that this is the best option. I just want to get that out there. So, because this is a really long meeting for change orders.
It is.
If I can actually just add on to what you just mentioned, I was actually thinking earlier today, it would be great to have
a lot of this presentation material before the meeting, so that we have an opportunity to look through this. That might help.
Agreed.
Jim, did you have another question?
Yeah, I just did have another question. I had a comment actually, and
Okay.
probably nobody wants to hear this, but it's I look at that and I say that's a piece of the project that we should have installed, and we should complete the system for the number that I'm seeing there. It doesn't seem awful. I get a little nervous when I see 20 something thousand dollars in tile that we can't really identify, and certainly $18,000 in asbestos that in all reality it's stuck to the wall. It's not flying around. It's not going to hurt anybody. Seems like a pretty much an integral part of the project. It's already designed. It's in the can. If we want to go after it, after the $39,000 later, we go after it. But let's, if there's one piece of the project, it seems like we can keep moving on. It's just doesn't seem like to me, and to me only, one that we should rock the boat on. So I would make a motion to approve this change order. But somebody else, I think, has already made a motion, didn't they? To table it.
I don't know if we had I guess we did have a motion to table
Yeah,
it, so
I made
we
that
can
motion.
handle it.
No.
Okay, so we can handle it as two votes. The first one would be whether to table it or not, or to bring it to a vote tonight. If we decide to bring it to a vote tonight, then we'll have a second vote, up or down. Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
All right, so we already have a motion to table. Can we have a second?
I'll second the table.
Okay.
All right, here's our voting. And we
So
are,
this is to table
yes.
until we get more information.
Dirks, nay. Fleckner,
Nay.
Riegert,
Nay.
Secor,
No.
Siegel,
Nay.
Teal,
Nay.
Cook,
Nay.
Hazelton not here, Karpinski,
Nay.
O'Connell,
Aye.
Patton not here, Roberts,
Given the sentiment, I'll say nay.
Wimberg is not here, Zegowitz.
Nay.
So it failed.
So next up.
It failed 1-0, 1-10-0.
All right, then can we have a motion to approve PCO 42 in the value of 39,631?
So moved.
Second.
So Jean and Chris. Voting, Dirks, aye, Fleckner,
That was actually Nancy, not Jean.
oh, sorry, so Jean and Nancy.
No, Nancy and Chris.
Nancy and Chris.
My apologies for.
It's all good.
That's-
I think I'm getting sleepy. All right.
I know, it's so sorry. That's what I was going to just quickly mention. Sorry, go ahead, Buffy.
All right, Nancy and Chris, right? I'll start again. Dirks, aye, Fleckner,
Aye.
Riegert,
Aye.
Secor,
Aye.
Siegel,
Aye.
Teal,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hazelton not here, Karpinski,
Aye.
O'Connell,
Nay.
nay, okay. Patton not here, Roberts,
Aye.
Wimberg not here, Zegowitz.
Aye.
So this one passed 10-1-0.
All right, Jennifer, that takes us to 51.
Okay, I'm just
Oh, I'm
gonna,
sorry, 43.
yep, we have two more items on the agenda. I just appreciate everyone's
Okay.
patience. So this is for electrical coordination with AV, IT, and security items. The value of this is not to exceed 92,429,000. This is a design change that was due to late coordination. There were multiple meetings between town's facilities department, CHA, the library. I left off the design team. Apologies. They were also part of this. To review the scope of work for our security, our data, and our audiovisual systems. And, this was a collaborative effort by multiple team members. It resulted in updated drawings that had changes to tel data, card access, power, fire alarm, camera systems, and door hardware was also as part of that with card access. So this resulted in additional cost for all of this coordination updates. This is a value of $92,429,000.
Jennifer, can you tell us what the original budget for this was?
So the work that we're talking about is within the electrical filed subbid scope. So that represents, it's a 3 million, I'm sorry, $1.968 million. So roughly $2 million is the value of the electrical scope. So what you're seeing here is costs related to electrical items. And
So it's about a 5% change. Over. Okay. Jim is.
So these, if I may, these are in all likelihood, when you say coordination, I think to a lot of us on sort of my end of things, I think of coordination as you get everybody around the table and we're trying to figure out whose conduit's going in first, where the duct's going to be, how is it going to get, how are we going to get the sprinkler pipe by there and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how that would reach $92,000. So in my mind, is it fair to say, Jennifer, that these are more material cost changes involved or as a result of those coordination efforts? Or now we're going to need new keypads, now we're going to do this, or we would like to change the system, things like that?
yes, so for
Okay.
example, there's 43 new electrical drops, electrical devices. So, the
That
quantities here have changed.
that we hadn't thought of in the beginning, or that
Yes.
weren't accounted for. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was just like coordination changes that okay. These are actual material cost changes. So on that end, it would be, to me, it seems like it would be great to have that listed. It would be a lot more convincing, getting back to somebody else's comment who said it would be great if we had this stuff before this meeting. But for me, it would be a lot more convincing if we saw exactly what you just said: 42 electrical drops, 13 keypads, the programming that goes with it in the end, all that kind of stuff. It make these things up a lot easier to stomach. That's it. That's all. Thank you.
And if I may add too, there was an effort when the documents were put together, I believe, and Jennifer or Chris or Kristen, who know the timeline a little bit better than me, the town meeting room updates for technology weren't complete yet at the time that the documents were put together. So there were many lessons learned from the town, different departments within the town on how the technology was done at town hall, and wanting to repeat or match some of that. So many of these changes were an effort to kind of take advantage of those lessons at town hall.
But to be clear, I want this cost here that you're seeing of $92,000 is related to the electrical contractor. So as a reminder, they're a filed subbidder. And so it's not for a piece of AV equipment. What the electrical contractor in our instance owns is if there's AV equipment or tel data equipment or security equipment, our electrical contractor owns bringing all of the conduits and running the wiring for all of those devices. The purchase of a projector screen or a card reader, those are done by other vendors. But this is the wiring and cabling, and that is a filed sub-bid trade. So this cost is all represented of the work of Bright Light Electrical, which is our electrical subcontractor.
And that's was the original budget of around $2 million. Was that electrical work, not the
Correct.
devices and everything else?
Yes.
Okay, this is just the wiring, essentially. All right. Megan?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions, and I apologize for the background noise. I'm in the car right now. So remind me, it's about 48 additional drops that came out of this. So I guess I'm a little concerned about what led to the lack of coordination before the final project documents were put together. Now, I've never been involved in public construction of this magnitude, but I've been involved in planning stages for commercial and industrial construction that's a larger scale. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around how we could have missed that many draws. So maybe just can you explain a little bit more about why this coordination didn't happen up front? And I understand maybe we're looking at it as only 5% of the electrical budget, but it is close to 100 grand.
Megan, I can help answer that. This is Kristen. We did not have our IT director closely look at the drawings enough before they went out to bid, and I will take responsibility for that. We subsequently have engaged our IT director and IT department, as well as the subs that are involved in the project, working with the design team, and feel that the design shown to you today under PCO 43 is what is needed for the building to be successful, to be safe, to meet the needs of the library and the town. I'd ask Jennifer or Leah if they wanted to add anything to that.
No, I agree with that.
Thank you, Kristen.
Ellen?
I will just add that when the town safety and security committee was meeting quite a few years ago now, while the library had a number of emergency handbook materials and emergency procedures in place and other things, we didn't have the security of swipe doors and swipe cards for non-public spaces. So I think one of the real things that this PCO does as well is bring us into more uniformity with other town buildings and ultimately with the type of AV potential that other town meeting rooms have. And that was one of the goals of that committee. And by finally moving to these IT produced swipe cards with photos and special QR codes on them, we will be compliant with other town buildings and be kind of brought up to the state-of-the-art security system that was looked at by that town committee.
Megan, your hand's still up?
Yeah, I was going to take it down, but I do have a follow-up question. So this is just for the electrical infrastructure, for lack of a better word. Are we to expect that there'll be additional change orders for additional AV equipment that wasn't originally in scope? Again, I'm trying to reconcile. We knew of the equipment. How did we not know about the infrastructure to support that?
Maybe I could just remind the committee that we are awaiting a $100,000 legislative earmark from Representative Arciero's office in the fall, and that's specifically for AV equipment. And I've actually asked our two legislatures for an additional $50,000 for signage, which is also a security and a wayfinding feature. So we hope to be defraying that additional cost through that legislative earmark.
So there is going to be, there are going to be equipment follow-on costs to this?
So with the AV, IT, and security, we're in the process of procuring those as separate contracts. So as I mentioned, the electrical contractor owns wiring and everything inside the wall, and then we have additional contracts. And so those, we are putting those out to bid. So the benefit we have here is that this work and coordination effort has happened prior to that going out to bid, so that we are getting a bid its most competitive manner. These changes to the electrical drawings happened after a bid, so it is less competitive in that manner. But we have the ability to do that with the procurement of the equipment, and it will align with what, for AV, for example, will align with what was procured in the town hall project, so that the town has consistency of equipment typologies, and the security can be consistent with other municipal buildings and policies at the town of Westford.
I think, Jennifer, the question maybe, so we have a specific budget set aside to go out to bid for technology. Could you say what that budget is, and do you believe that we will exceed that budget based upon these new electrical drops? I think that's what Megan's getting at.
It's close enough to.
So we have a budget available for about $650,000 for those trades. And we did some comparison of them as we went through this process to look at the quantities of those, and felt that we were still, that budget number was still, we're comfortable with that number.
Any more questions or comments on PCO 43? Can I have a motion to approve PCO 43 and a not to exceed amount of $92,429?
So moved.
Second.
All right. That was Chris and Nancy this time, right? All right.
Usual suspects.
Yeah. Dirks, aye. Fleckner?
Aye.
Riegert?
Aye.
Secor?
Aye.
Siegel?
Aye.
Steele?
Aye.
Cook?
Aye.
Hazelton not here. Karpinski?
Aye.
O'Connell?
Reluctant, aye.
I'm sorry, Megan?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Cadden not here. Roberts?
Aye.
Wimberg not here. Zegowitz?
Aye.
And it passed. 1, 2, 3.
Can we have an update on the contingency fund before we get on to the next one?
Wait a minute, Jim. It passed
We-
11-0-0.
All right, we still have one more item, Jim. We have 51, the EV panel modifications.
I'm afraid.
Jim's asking if we have any money left.
I can scroll down the agenda and show you, it's in your packet, the contingency fund. And then I think tonight you will have spent somewhere around $200,000 more. I'll try to add that up for you, Jim, during the next
Thank
one.
you.
All right, so Jennifer?
So the next item and the last item is PCO 51. This is for EV panel modifications. And the value of this is $37,366. And this is field revisions were requiring a change to the design. Bulletin 16 was a revision of the relocation of the EV panel, which increased the feeder distance. And that increased the distance of the location, including the wiring that was needed. So that new route is 25% longer than the original route, it increased a wire size needed to it. We did have the engineer confirm the validity of the cost. And the panel relocation was due to field conditions and the congestion of the electrical room. So I'm sharing an image of the main electrical room so people can see the quantity of material that's in the electrical room. This is in December. A lot more construction has happened. The slab has been poured, et cetera, et cetera. But this electrical room is, there's quite a bit of material in this electrical room. And then this happens to be taken this month. These are the underground conduits that are outside of the building. And so that's increased. Those are the conduits that increased in size because of the added length of this process. Leah, is there anything else that you think needs to be elaborated on?
I think the only thing that I would add, because I know we have a curious group here, is that the level of layout and coordination that was done by the electrical engineers, they lay out mains and panels, and that's pretty typical for this level of project. Not every secondary conduit gets laid out because there's quite a number of them. Typically, those get run in ceilings. In this particular, and you can count on a certain quantity of that secondary conduit being able to run in ceilings typically. As we learned some of the existing conditions within this building, as everybody has seen from other topics that we've brought to you, there was even less space in some of these ceilings and than originally anticipated, which required additional pipes, wires, such to be routed underground, which added to this congestion. So in order to help alleviate that and be able to get the lines that we needed to have within the building, the EV charger panels were removed to the exterior of the building. Because of where they needed to be placed on the exterior of the building, because of windows, doors, such, that is where the additional percentage of wiring came that Jennifer quoted before. So just to give a little more context of why the panels were relocated from their original location and why we're looking at these increased wire sizes.
Questions on this one? All right. Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve PCO 51 for $37,366?
So moved.
Second.
All right, that was Jean, but who seconded it? Was that
It was me.
Marilyn, Marianne.
Oh, hi. All right, here's our voting then. Dirks, aye. Fleckner,
Aye.
Krieger,
Aye.
Secor,
Aye.
Siegel,
Aye.
Steele,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hazelton not here, Karpinski,
Aye.
O'Connell,
Also a reluctant aye.
Patton not here, Roberts,
Aye.
Lindbergh not here, Zagowitz.
I'll do the reluctant aye as well.
It's still an aye. 11-0-0.
All right. So that takes us through the change orders. Ellen, do you want to just update us quickly on the
Yes, so
contingent
you
fund?
have just approved $230,121, and that means our current balance in the contingency fund is $3,223,793 and change, about 50 cents. We started with 3,931,700 as our contingency. So you're still at about 3.25 million. And I'll, once these are signed by Kristen, I'll post these and you'll see them. I'm including the contingency fund printout from the account posting every packet for you, so you can see that descending number and what's a transfer and what's a change order. Because I figured if I couldn't remember it, you couldn't remember it either, and we all needed to see it in print. Okay, so I'll be sure to have that next time.
Okay. Anything else on anyone's mind before we take a motion to adjourn?
So I just want to summarize, we have tabled PCO 39 to the July 13th meeting, and we will, the design team and the OPM team, we will get further information for you at that meeting.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh, boy.
Second.
I don't think you need to take a vote, Buffy. I think everyone moved.
All right, who officially seconded? I heard Chris first.
Me, Nancy.
All right, Nancy Cook. Dirk Sy, Fleckner,
Aye.
Biegert,
Aye.
Secor,
Aye.
Siegel,
Aye.
Teal,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hazelton not here, Karpinski,
Aye.
O'Connell,
Enthusiastic aye.
Adams not here, Roberts,
Aye.
Lindbergh not here, Zegowitz.
Aye.
So we adjourned at 8:52, 11:00.
All right.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
All right.